Okay. Sweet. Hello. How y'all doing? Um, I decided to try this live thing out. I've been writing this message for like a week, and I thought it was very interesting, and figure I would share it with you guys. And I know some of you don't know that I know this much about the Bible, but I do, and and I have some other cool stuff about communication on here. So I figured I'd share it with you guys, see what you guys think. So I noticed a lot of people is very overwhelmed and see how hard it is to understand the Bible at times. Uh, and so what I want to do is I want to like simplify what's all going on, starting with the Old Testament. And that way you can comprehend the context and being able to find uh, the information in the Bible on your own. And so I'm going to start with like a micro concept. So like I could go through the whole Bible, but I want to just start with this small concept, and then maybe later I'll go into the bigger picture. Not today, but like after this. Um, and then what I'd like to talk about um, is what I'm going to start with. Okay, so whenever a person calls himself a Christian, they mostly say they're not a religion. It's just a relationship with Jesus. And if you don't understand that right now, don't worry, I got you covered. Um, the key word here is relationship. And how is that possible? I'll explain that in a few. But I looked up what relationship is on Google, and it didn't really seem super clear in my mind. I thought it would have a clear response, but it says the way in which two or more concepts, objects, or people are connected, or the state of being connected. And then the second definition is uh, the state of being connected by the blood or marriage. So basically, it's up to people's feelings or a contract. And, and I would say, I'm going to say that all relationships have a common thread, and they all have to have an understanding of that person that they're connecting with, and and they have to know the nature of that person instead of not just knowing their name and then poof, you're in a relationship. I don't think that's how it works. I think it's more understanding the nature and being comfortable with that person. And that's what I feel like the Old Testament is doing, that God's speaking to us through the Old Testament about his nature. And I feel like that our relationships are a mirror of who God is. And so, like, I'll explain this a little bit further down, what I mean by that. But according to the Bible, God made us in his own image. And that's why I feel like it's like a mirror. So, with that note, most of our understanding of another person would be through communication. And then this is where I talk about these forms of communication. So, the forms of communication is introduction, boundaries, and stories, to show who that person is, and sharing of perspectives. And so, to understand what I mean by all these steps, let's talk about dating. That's the thing that involves a lot of this communication, building of relationships. So let's just set the mood here. So like you already got this person's phone number, and you already made the date to go out, and meet at a restaurant to talk, and got all ready to look nice, and you sat at the table and you're looking across to that person, and you're like, where do you start? Well, most people, they start with an introduction. I know, like, introduction, you think of my name, place, and age or whatever, but like, you guys know each other's names, but like, you want to talk about, usually people want to talk about surface things that tells you a little bit about yourself and who you are. And so, like, for instance, that would involve like talking about things you like to do for fun. What is your family dynamic like? Um, where do you live? What do you do for work? What are you passionate about? What How did you get to where you're at? And future plans, stuff like that. And then that basic stuff usually like leads into a story, right? And in these stories, like, stories, I know sound too simple, but like, I always notice that people love a good story. So like, in those stories, don't just, it's like you have a PowerPoint and a huge outline, and you can't just like list off, oh, I'm happy, I'm easygoing, I'm fun loving, or whatever, and that's really boring. And you see that on the internet, like, oh, here's my bio, and then they list off all the things they like. But instead, one of the things that we do a lot of is tell a story. And these stories, like, describe who you are, as a person. I'll give you an example. It's kind of an okay story, but it's the first one that comes to my mind. Like, I went on a date, and with this girl, and had a communication with her and all that stuff, and everything was going great. And then the date was ending, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go on my way. And this girl's like, well, I gotta go to the hospital. And I was like, why do you gotta go to the hospital? And he says, well, there's something wrong with me, and I just came because I want to make sure I'm going on a date or something like that. Very unusual for me, for that to ever happen. I was like, okay, so you're gonna drive yourself to the hospital by yourself? Oh no, I have to go get a ride, and then go to the hospital. I was like, okay, well, I'll go with you and drive you to the hospital. And so I stayed all night with this girl, and I guess she had something wrong with her tonsils, and they had to put like a needle in the back of her throat. I hate needles, honestly. It was, I just comforted her. I stayed there and tried to, like, because I know how it is if you're in a hospital. I wouldn't want to be by myself. It'd suck. And not knowing very much about her, well, only from the date. And the women there are like, "Oh, you're such a nice boyfriend." I was like, "No, this is our first date." They're like, "Oh wow, this is crazy." So with that small story, like, I don't have to say a whole lot of who I am, but you could get from that story like, "Oh, this guy's really caring. Um, he'll try to help people," and that, like, shows those type of qualities just from one story. And that's how dynamic stories could be, on telling who that person is. And then now, from like stories, it's like people feel comfortable, um, to talk about boundaries, and usually that means like, uh, likes and dislikes. And so, like, for instance, people will say like, I'm allergic to peanuts or animals, or I don't like staying up late, or I don't like waking up early, um, or they dislike certain, yeah, foods, fire said foods. And so for me, like, if I'm on a date, I'll go over and, I know it's not like the best move to do, but I like to ask what about the past relationships, and that usually tells me what the other person doesn't like. Like, what that other person that they dated, what boundaries did they cross that that they really didn't like. Um, and then usually after all that, people either avoid this, but it's important, is to share your perspective. And if you can't feel comfortable to share your beliefs and opinions, then how are you gonna be close with that person. And so I believe all of these points are a roadmap to building intimacy with another person. So just so you get what I'm saying, it's it's introduction, boundaries, stories, and sharing of perspectives. It's four things, right? And so now here's the other part. So this leads to the story of Job. When I read Job, um, and looking at it with this perspective, it really hit me. It says, okay, so let me just tell you the story of Job, and then I'm going to show you how this all ties in. So, for those that don't know, God allows the devil to destroy everything besides take Job's life. And at the end, God tells him he's God and created everything. And then Job never forsaked God during his trials and stuff. And so God blessed him more. And everyone likes to talk about how beautiful Job's daughters are. And that was at the end. His extra blessing. He gets beautiful daughters that are more beautiful than anywhere else. And I mean, I'm hoping that God will give me one of Job's daughters, but that's beside the fact. But anyways, so basically, from that basic story, I'd say that you just follow the Ten Commandments, you ask for forgiveness for me and possibly my family every day, just in case, so they can all go to heaven and be blessed, and then do whatever I can to help people and never give up on God, and I'll be blessed no matter what. Okay, perfect, right? And I know a lot of people that will liken to that and go, yeah, that's part of being a Christian. Let's just be just good little soldiers, right? And I get that. That's cool. But I want to look at this in a different perspective. Um, let's think of it like this. Um, let's look at it in the way of relationship and communication, right? Because Christians say Christianity is about relationships, and relationship with Jesus and all that has to have communication. So how in the world uh, did Job get it wrong? I mean, let's see here. So hold up for a sec. Let's do the space. Okay. So let's look at it this way. All right. I'm gonna read another thing here. Let's read from Job here. Okay. So let's go over and look at this. So in John 1:8, he calls Job his servant. And he's possibly the best servant. That's what he says. And he's basically clocking in his religion points to get his blessing at the end of the day. All that sounds, and you know what I mean? Like that, all that sounds like a religion. So I looked up religion, and basically it says usually defined as a social cultural system, design, behaviors, and practices, and morals, beliefs, and worldviews, texts, and sanctified places, and prophecies, and ethics, and organization. Okay, cool. So okay, Christian is not a religion, it's a relationship. Okay, so in a relationship standpoint, I think that he fits in. Like the first thing that came to me when I saw the story, the first thing that came to me is that Job is a type of person that girls would call a nice guy. And what I mean by that is a person that like guys will hang out with girls and do all these things that they think girls want, and then they feel like they're owed something because they were that nice person. And I mean, we see that in other ways too. Like, guys want a nice girl, they're nice to them for that very reason. And so like Job is treating God like he's that nice guy. That, oh, there's nothing he could do. He's doing everything right. Can't do anything wrong. He doesn't deserve anything wrong. And especially when like that nice guy problem happens at the end, like guys get all angry and they're like, I'm friend zoned and all this stuff, and I don't deserve your being mean to me. I did everything for you. I bought gifts and took you out and spent so much time with you and all that stuff. So you think to yourself, you're like, how can you explain that to another person, to be like that you don't like this person because they're just being, basically some people call it a simp, but I digress. Anyway, so let's just visit the story again. I gave you the simple version. Let's look at this a little bit closer. Um, so all of Job's sheep and servants got burnt up from their first like plague, basically, and he lost everything around him, and when that all happened, the very first thing he goes and says, let's just go visit that part. I didn't write it down because I feel like it's better just to read it. So he lost everything, right? And he goes, at that point, at this, Job got up, tore his robe, shaved his head, and then fell to the ground in worship, and said, naked I come from the mother's womb, and naked I will depart. And the Lord give, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. Okay, great. So he just did like a practice that looks good and sounds worthy of blessing. Like it really does. I mean, how can you, I'm sure God would definitely bless that, right? And and even his friends, like that heard about his problem and that he was having, they even want to come over and do kind of the same thing for him to see if that would help his blessing, you know. And that happened in 2:11. It says all these crazy names. Don't know all of his friends' names, but you could see him if you're really interested in him. And so all the troubles that he had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together by agreement and go and sympathize with Job and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. And then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. I mean, it's a big deal, but is that something that is gonna create more blessing? Well, according to them, that's what made it happen for them. That's what they thought would work. And so the rest of this book of Job was on the communication of the idea that God blesses those that do good things, and people that are doing bad things get judgment. And then God speaks, and in the story he finally speaks to them directly, right, or to Job, and shares his infinite power over the universe and tells Job he doesn't understand all of what he does. And let's see what else Job says to God. Finally, him and God are talking, right? And Job just says this. He says, I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. Right? And it says, you asked who this obscures my plan without knowledge. Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. You said, listen now, I will speak, and I will question you, and you shall answer me. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in the dust and ashes. Okay, so that doesn't, I mean, Job did nothing wrong. So why would he repent and within his sorrow? I mean, he went through a lot of stuff. It's crazy. But I think what this is, what it's saying within the framework what I just talked about earlier, is that saying, God introduced himself to Job, and Job didn't know God, and he's probably repenting because he did all those things, but he didn't really know God. He was doing all the right things, but he had no communication with God. He didn't go to God when he was having problems. He just went to a ritual to solve his problem. And then, so instead of going after things, he's going after things for a reward instead of looking at this as a relationship. So, like, if I was in that situation of him and I lost everything, I mean, the first thing I would do is I'd pray and ask God to reveal to me what I needed to work on in my life, or even ask God, what are you trying to tell me? Um, and just like I would be talking to God first, I wouldn't be trying to figure out what ritual I need to circumvent this situation. Um, so then let's think about there's other guys in the Bible that had a relationship with God, and they had a very different response. They didn't do a ritual. They had some choice words for God. So I look up the scripture in Exodus 32:8-14, and this one is it's Moses, and he's up on the mountain, right? And the people that he has helped get out of Egypt, and he's up there with God to figure out what he wants to do, and God is mad at these people for building a golden calf and just rejecting him, basically rejecting God. So let's just read what it says here, so we can give more clarity. It says, "They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them, and have made them slaves and idol, cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it, and have said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. And I've seen these people," this is God, "and the Lord said to Moses, they are stiff-necked people, and now leave me alone, so that my anger may burn against them, and that I may destroy them, and then I will make you into a great nation." Basically, God's wanting to make a covenant with Moses like he did with Abraham. But Moses sought the favor of the Lord, this is God. "Lord," he said, "why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with a great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, it was the evil instant that he brought them out to evil intent? It was evil intent that he brought them out to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off the face of the earth. Turn from your fierce anger, relent, and do not bring danger to your people." Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self, I will make your descendants as a number as the stars in the sky. And I will give your descendants all this land I promised them, and I'll be their inheritance forever. And then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. Moses turned and went down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, and they are inscribed in both hands. So basically, if you can think about this, that Moses, there's one other thing to share before this part, is that Moses already knows God. And the reason why he could talk to him like he already knows him is because he came, when he was younger, there was a burning bush, and God introduced himself through the burning bush and told him about himself and shared stories of who he was to Moses. And now we're all the way into the future of that situation. And now he's up on the mountain talking to God again. And now Moses is talking, or God's talking to him about his boundaries. Like he's threatened by these people just rejecting him and cheating on him with another idol and worshiping other gods. And he's pretty angry about this. And so he's sharing his perspective that you should probably get rid of them and create another covenant, which now you know from the Old Testament that covenants are important to God. And Moses is like, hey, why would you pull these people from Egypt and then go over and kill them and then go over and create a whole new family through me? Why not just be merciful and follow the covenant that you promised to the other people? And that is a communication of someone that knows God in a deeper way. And the other one that's in the Bible that responds to God. I know David is known for having his issues, but and going back to God, but Job never. It doesn't talk about Job sinning, but it says he does all the right things. So right now, here's David's prayer to God. He's going through some issues. He's lost everything. He's out there in the middle of the desert, and he doesn't do a ritual. It doesn't say he does a ritual. So in Psalms 86, he says, and get this is what he says to God. And he's definitely not saying, oh man, let's talk about judgment, let's talk about blessing and all this. Let's just see here. You'll say, hear me, O Lord, answer me, for I am poor and needy, and guard my life. I am faithful to you. Save your servant who trusts in you. You are my God. Have mercy on me, O Lord, for I call to you all day long. Bring joy to your servant, Lord, for I put my trust in you. You and Lord are forgiving and good and abundant in love to all who call to you. You hear my prayer, Lord. Listen to my cry for mercy. When I am in distress, I call to you, because you answer me. Among the gods, there is none like you, Lord. No deeds can compare with yours. All nations you have made will come and worship before you, Lord. They will bring glory to your name, for you are great and do marvelous deeds. You alone are God. Teach me your ways, Lord, that I may rely on your faithfulness. Give me an undivided heart, that I may fear your name, and I'll praise you, Lord my God, with all my heart. And I will glorify your name forever, for great is your love towards me. You have delivered me from the depths, from the realm of the dead. Arrogant foes are attacking me, O God. Ruthless people are trying to kill me, and they have no regard for you. But you, Lord, are the compassionate, gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. Turn to me and have mercy on me, and show your strength on behalf of your servant. Save me, because I serve you, just as my mother did. Give me a sign of your goodness, that my enemies may see it and be put to shame. For you, Lord, have helped me and comforted me. That's entirely different than what Job does. I can read another part of Job where Job's like cursing himself, kind of basically suicidal. And he does that in an earlier part of the book. You check it out. So let's see here. So now you could see the difference of these two guys in the Bible, Moses and David, compared to Job, and you could see God is a fashion that leads me to believe. See the difference? These guys spoke to God is a fashion that leads me. Oh. So the difference on these guys is God is interested in relationship over rituals. And Job chose religious practices instead of going to God. But Moses and David spoke to God directly and asked for mercy. And so I believe from all this, you can understand that the Old Testament is revealing the nature of God. And I think God did this because he wants a relationship with us. And this is his way of speaking to us on our level. What I mean by that is I believe the Old Testament is laid out in a communication way that reveals himself to us, just like the book of Job, that in the Bible, in the Old Testament, he's talking about himself, the introduction, sharing what in the Bible, all the boundaries of things that that he doesn't like, and he's sharing all these stories so you could see what his nature is, and then sharing the perspective of what he sees. And Job is one of those stories that he wants us to see, and I used that communication style in the book of Job, which revealed to me that what I'm saying is that Job used religious practices instead of going to God straight, and debated with his friends. And and I believe that he repented from not having a relationship with God, and that's why God blessed him even more, because he probably got the picture. And so the scripture that stuck out to me after all this was John 15:15, and in the New Testament, and it says, God no longer calls us to be servants, but friends, and his plans will be known to us through Jesus, which is interesting. Basically, another reference to having a relationship with God so he can reveal himself to us, right? And so I believe this is the small picture of what God is trying to share with us in the Old Testament. And the next thing I want to talk about is talking about the Old Testament as a whole and how to use what I'm gleaning from the Bible with this perspective of a relationship instead of historical events and how to pick apart a historical event, but see it as I'm sitting at the table with God, and he's telling me things through the Bible, And I know that like some people are looking for like an audible supernatural thing to come. And one of the things that I noticed is in the Bible from reading it is that um, God spoke with the Israelites from the very beginning in an audible voice, and it scared them, and they pointed to um, someone else to listen for them and tell them what God's saying. And as I take you through more of the Old Testament, you see that after many generations, they pull themselves farther and farther away from God, and it prevents God to speak with them directly. And so I feel like the Bible um, has been written and given to us so that we can connect with Him, even though we're distant from God, and and possibly being able to read this and understand this stuff will give you a pathway to get closer to God, that things become clearer to you, and you'll be able to have that experience. Anyways, thanks for listening. Appreciate you guys. I just wanted to share all that. And if you like it, let me know. Um, if not, no big deal. First time trying this. Let's see how it goes. Well, see you guys all later.